It is Thursday, March 20th, 2025. This is the Human School Podcast, and I'm your host, Carlos Whittaker. Today is part 2 of our incredible conversation with Ivan Mawarire. Ivan's story last week, I know because I saw your emails, I saw your comments on YouTube, touched you, but you were waiting for part 2 because your curiosity, you're like, Carlos, I have to wonder all week. Yes, remember? You're talking to the wondering man, Carlos, the wondering expert, the one that wants to help you not know everything all the time. So what a great way to experiment what wondering actually feels like by only giving you part 1. This week, now the story gets going. Ivan is about to inspire you in ways that I don't think you're ready for. So sit back and enjoy part 2 of our conversation with Ivan.
And that was so far from what we were trying to do.
Right.
So far from it. And those 2 nights that I spent in that prison were some of the hardest, Carlos. I was beaten and tortured in ways I still cannot talk about publicly.
Wow.
And it was a difficult 2 nights to bear. The only thing I'm thankful for is that my life was spared.
Yeah.
That night. But I want to say this before I just pause and let you come back at me. It was the morning after those 2 days that they were taking me to court for trial. It was that morning that something happened that none of us expected that made the 2 nights in prison feel less painful.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what happened. We were about to take off to go to the courts, and the police officers who were going to drive me came to my cell and they said, we have to delay. There's about 100 people that have gathered at the courts. They are draped in Zimbabwe flags. They're kneeling on their knees and they're praying, and they're saying they won't leave the courts until you're released.
Huh.
And I was a bit scared because I thought, no, wait, who are these people? And
Right.
and the police said, well, this we believe it's people from your church. And I was like, whoa. My church has 40 people. You said 100.
Right.
I've never wanted to disown.
Yeah, but members from your church.
Oh, I was just like, no, we only have 40. But they came back 2 hours later and they're like, hey, there's about 500 people. And we're sending the riot squad to go and clear them and move them out the way. And it won't take us 5 minutes. But they came back again and they're like, hey, there's about 1,000 people. Then they came back and there's about 3,000 people. And this number just keeps growing. And what's happening is that somehow spontaneously, people are beginning to mobilize themselves and are beginning to go back to the last 3 months of the work that we were doing.
Right.
Of the campaigns and the videos. And they're saying, this guy has been standing up for us. This is the moment that we show up. Do you know, by the time they brought me to court, which is about 7 p.m., there was over 10,000 people gathered at the courts. Wow. They were standing there with candles. It was late at night with candles, with flags, and they were singing, and they refused to leave until I was released. And because the government then feared that this was turning into a revolution, they actually released me that night.
They did.
They did. They released me that night. I wept like a baby. Because the realization for me, Carlos, and this is why I say that event erased the pain of the last 2 nights.
Yeah.
First of all, it was the realization that everyone has courage. It's not just a few special people.
Yeah.
People found their courage. They showed up. Every one of those people that showed up, those people are amazing. They showed up with courage. That's number one. And I think the second thing I realized that night as I wept was that whole arrest, everything I went through was not about me.
Right.
It was about a much bigger purpose. It was about other people. But for every breakthrough that we need, for our families, for the communities we're in, for our nation, there has to be one person or a small group of people who are willing to say, I'll be the one to step out first.
Yeah.
I'll be the one. I'll go first. I'll go and model it.
Yes.
And then after that, everyone else begins to follow. For me, it's such a gospel-centered a way of understanding,
Absolutely.
breakthroughs and freedom. That it starts with that one willing person who says, it's about something bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I'm willing for others to learn from watching
Yes.
my journey.
Wow. Evan, now we're sitting 9 years after these events that happened. Can you catch us up with what ended up happening in your country because of of not only this, but what ended up happening after?
That moment that I've brought you to is only half the story.
Yes.
That night when I'm released, we learned through a police chaplain that I was going to be rearrested in the morning.
Okay.
And so the decision is that I must leave the country immediately. And so my wife, to whom I owe a great debt, says to me, you need to go. Honey, you got to get out of here. We can't afford you to get hurt. We'll find a way to go. And some friends of mine then would help my family. Yeah. And so I take a backpack and my passport and I'm driven 6 hours across to a small border where I'm able to finally escape. And it was a dramatic escape into Botswana, then into South Africa. Then I rendezvous with my family, who my friends were able to move out quite quickly. And once we're together, then the president finally threatens us publicly.
Oh,
and
really?
He makes a speech. Yes, he makes in a speech. He then immediately says, people like Pastor Mawarire should watch out and should know their place because I have special jails for people like them.
Wow.
And then he says if he wants to cause chaos in this country, he'll end up in that jail. Otherwise, he must stay out of Zimbabwe.
Wow.
And so immediately we know that this is not a safe situation.
Yes.
We leave South Africa where we were and we end up in the United States. And this is August of 2016.
Okay.
We get here. My daughter is born. It was just in time. My daughter is born. And every time people hear me talk about this story, they're like, dude, what were you doing with a family like that? And I always say, hey, the perfect time to start trouble with a brutal dictator is when you have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a pregnant wife. That's the perfect time. But I mean, it's yes, I mean, I say that and it's a bit of a joke, but what I'm trying to say is there is no perfect time, Carlos.
Right. Never.
There's never a perfect time for you to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to get on with it. And so my daughter is born, and 3 months after she's born, I start to have that sense in my heart that says the job is not done. I believe God was talking to me. The job is not done, Ivan. You must go back to Zimbabwe. And so we have this very difficult conversation with my wife, and she graciously, but with so much concern and fear for me, allows me to go, and I make the trip back to Zimbabwe.
You make a public on a airline trip landing in the country where you have to check in at the border?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So I board a plane and in the US and it flies through. I remember I went through Heathrow.
Yeah.
And then into South Africa. And then from South Africa, I boarded on the final leg into Harare. I just wrote a book about it just last month. And in this book, I talk about that final leg and
do
how
people know you on that flight? Like are there Zimbabweans that are like, it's Pastor?
Oh, yes. And at this point, I'd been away for 6 months. I'd been away for 6 months. And I'm on this flight and I can see people looking at me. You know how you know when someone is, you know that these people are looking at me.
Yeah.
And I especially remembered this when the plane finally touched down and the seatbelt sign goes off and we all stand up and we're starting to walk in the aisle. This one guy walks up to me and he says to me, hey man, I just want you to know that we're proud of you and that we're behind you. Wow. And that's at that moment, I realized two things. First of all, that people knew I was on the flight.
Yes.
But that people also knew somehow that, at least for me, I felt like that statement was that guy kind of knew that ahead it was not going to be easy.
Right.
And of course, as I walk off the plane, right out of the plane door, I'm on my way to the immigration line to get my passport stamped. I'm immediately surrounded by security agents, and I'm arrested immediately on arrival at the airport.
Wow.
And that begins the second part of this journey, which was even tougher than the first one.
Did you know that when your metabolism is working properly, you will feel the benefits in literally every single aspect of your life? And there is a tool that gives me the insights to create a healthy metabolism for my body. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's literally this tiny little device that measures my metabolism through my breath. That's right. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even your stress. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements that come from your breath. We are living in the future, people. Listen, because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including what? Easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness, and all sorts of things. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health, and I love mine. Take the next step in improving your health. Go to lumen.me/Carlos to get 20% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Carlos for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
This time I'm sent off to a maximum security prison. It's done very quickly, so there's no time for people to gather at the courts or anything. Right. And I find myself in a maximum security prison, a prison which I had only ever heard stories about and never imagined in my entire life that I would end up in that place.
Wow.
And in this prison, I remember on the day that I arrived, in fact, on the way there, I thought I was dead. I thought I was dying. They had held me in one prison, and then overnight, they decided to move me to the maximum security prison. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is how people die. This is the end of it. And I'm sitting in the back of this police truck. I'm in handcuffs and I'm in leg irons, and I'm just sobbing and shaking with fear, because I have concluded that I'm dying. That's the end of it. And in between the sobs, I sing a hymn that I had heard when I was 15 years old, when I was in boarding school. And it's a hymn called Abide With Me. You know, and the first verse says, abide with me, fast forth the eventide. The darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, Lord, abide with me. And I'm singing this and weeping at the same time. And I begin to just be thankful for the life I have lived, that I've been able to see my children, but that I've also been able to serve people to the best of my ability. And it was such a moment of clarity of life for me. But it's when we get to the maximum security prison that one of the biggest miracles of this whole journey is waiting for me. Because I get there with the full expectation that the prisoners there will beat me and rape me, as what happens in a maximum security prison. But as I'm entering this maximum security prison, in the courtyard where I am led into, these 4 guys approach me who are part of the 400 men who are in that maximum security prison. And the thing about the maximum security prison in Zimbabwe is, and all of the other prisons, they're not like cubicles where you have 2 bunks and 2 people are in the no. It's a dormitory style. It's one room where 50 people sleep on the floor. Head, feet in kind of a regimented style. So I walk into the courtyard where there's over 400 men, but these 4 guys walk up to me. And it's my full expectation that they're walking up to me to start the process of intimidation or just full on battery like I've never known before. And I'm standing there. I remember closing my eyes and thinking, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I will try to defend myself. Yeah. But they walk up to me, and one of the guys stretches out his hand towards me and he says, "Welcome, Pastor Ivan. We've been expecting you." And it was a confusing moment. And I said, "You've been expecting me?" He says, "Yeah. We heard what you did last year at the prisons when people gathered in their thousands. And that's because some of our friends were at the courts for trial, and their cases didn't happen because of the crowds that had gathered for you. So we know the whole story. But more importantly, my friends and I, my 3 friends and I, decided when we heard that you were arrested and you were coming, they were bringing you to this cell. My three friends and I decided that in the same way that you have been serving our families whom we can't help because we are locked up on the inside, in that very same way, we want to commit ourselves to serving you for as long as you're going to be in this prison. And our job is going to be that we want you to leave this prison stronger than you were when you came in. Carlos, when you prepare yourself for one action, and then the total opposite happens.
Yes.
And you don't know what to do anymore. I was prepared for a fight. These guys came and just embraced me. It was like the most bizarre, pleasant thing to happen.
Yes.
From 4 prisoners, guys that are confessed criminals, guys that don't deny their crimes, but had such a heart. I owe these men. These guys looked after me.
They did.
Carlos, every time I came back from solitary confinement, every time I came back from a torture session, it was 4 prisoners, 1 guy who was serving a life sentence for murder, another 2 guys who were serving 18 years for armed robbery. It was these 4 people who looked after me, who saved me some food, who bandaged my wounds. And then they would stand me up in front of a group of people and say, "Preach, Pastor. You're not going to be here for long. You're going to leave, but there's another mission and another purpose here."
Wow.
It didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense, but it made the most sense.
Yeah.
That sometimes we find strength and relief in the most unexpected of places. Sometimes we're so used to only looking to the powerful and connected and the well-resourced people to help us. But did you know that even people who have nothing can just be a friend?
Wow.
Can just be there?
Yeah.
These 4 guys became my world. These 4 guys became everything to me. My brothers, they became my confidants. They were my pastors at one point. And true to their word. True to their word. When I left that prison 3 months later, I was stronger than I was when I came in. And here's how I know. Because I would go on to be arrested another 6 times after that. And I was arrested with joy and excitement and full of purpose. Yeah. This time I was in. This time I was intended on the work I was doing.
Yeah.
And it remains a powerful experience for me. My last arrest was in 2019, but prior to that arrest, in 2017, we participated in a once-in-a-lifetime event, which is a moment in which we saw the dictatorship of Robert Mugabe collapse.
Wow.
I was out on bail. I think I was facing 3 treason charges at the time, possible 60 years in prison if I was found guilty. And Robert Mugabe's party, the dictator, he had an implosion in the party.
Really?
And we suddenly saw an opportunity. And so I began to speak to the citizens. I said, "Listen, this is it. This is the moment that we've been waiting for. We are not in his party, but they're having an implosion, and we should take part in this right now. Let's get out onto the street and demand that he steps down." And through a series of events and other people that played their part as well, including some of his own party members who turned against him, we were able to get millions of people on the street across the country and march against Robert Mugabe. And finally, he stepped down.
He stepped down.
And he stepped down. It was none of us, and he was 93 years old by the time he stepped down. He'd been in power for 37 years. None of us ever thought we would see that day.
Yeah.
And yet we did. We thought that the country would get better after that. The vice president took over, who was his second in charge.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, they just chose to carry on the same way that he had gone, which was so sad, such a missed opportunity. We thought we had a moment we would restart things with Zimbabwe.
Was there an election, or did it just
no?
Go in?
It was so since he had his term of office hadn't ended.
Oh, okay.
His deputy kind of assumed office to finish that off. Then we went to an election, and in that election, people were brutalized so badly. It was horrible. And so in January of 2019, we put together what would be my last protest against this new dictator. It was a boycott as well, right across the country. We asked people to stay at home. This time we worked with the trade unions, and we were now kind of working with allies. And we asked people once again to boycott and stay at home as a way of saying, we promised you that if you do to us what Robert Mugabe did to us, we will do to you what we did to him.
Yeah.
And so we shut it down again, which was our second shutdown. And excited that it was successful, but they didn't take too kindly to that.
Yeah.
I was arrested in my home on January 16, 2019, and by 18 armed riot police officers who came to my home. And they took me off back to Chikurubi Maximum Security Prison. An exciting moment for me on that arrest was stopping by the door of my house. I've just come from LA where I was preaching this last weekend, and I was telling them the story. And I stopped by the door and I looked at these police officers and I said to them, guys, every day before I leave my house, I pray. And today, just because you guys have come to arrest me is no different. I would like to pray, and I'd like you guys to join me in prayer. And it's actually on video. I'll send you the video of this moment, because one of the lawyers who was with me caught it on tape. And so I said, I'd like for you guys to join me. And they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But they agreed.
They did.
And I said, let's bow our heads and pray. And they bowed their heads. I'm in handcuffs. And I was intentionally the last person to close my eyes so that we could pray. And just so that I could see this moment, this special moment. And so we pray, and in the prayer, I intentionally pray for them, for their families, for their well-being, for the fact that I'm not just fighting for me, but I'm fighting for them too, for their families, for the future of their children. And it was great because as I finished that prayer and we were leaving in the pickup truck, one of the police officers turned to me and said, hey, just wanted to ask if I can loosen your handcuffs just a little bit, if that's, and I could see the humanity. I could see the human side of people who had been sent on an assignment, a brutal assignment, one which I believe they were conflicted when it came to the assignments they were sent to do, because these are poor policemen and who don't earn much. They have to send their children to the same schools as I do, maybe even worse. They have to go to the same hospitals as I go to, maybe even worse hospitals. And so they understand what I'm doing, and they have this conflict between the job they have and the brutality they have to mete out to something that they believe is actually benefiting them.
Right.
And of course, that for me was exciting because it taught me a lot about dealing kindly even with people who brutalize you.
Yes.
Because sometimes you don't know what you're going to unlock in these people. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to do. And there would be many of those moments in my journey across the 3.5 years of the work that I did, of meeting people who were on the inside that decided they would help, or decided they would give me a special piece of information simply because there was a recognition that that they too were human and that they too had struggles they were going through.
I literally would not know how to drink water without my AquaTrue. When I tell you that's the truth, ask my family. Like literally, nobody ever hears me just turn the faucet on and fill up my water bottle. No, I got to have my AquaTrue doing it for me. Why? Well, because drinking water is important to staying hydrated and healthy. In fact, 60% of my body is made up of water. So if you're like me, you probably don't trust your tap water, but you know who I do trust? AquaTrue. That's right. You're going to want to check out AquaTrue. AquaTrue purifiers use a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process. And their countertop purifiers, which is the one that I have, work with no installation or plumbing. That's right. Best of all, the water tastes fantastic and you don't have to worry about PFAS or other harmful contaminants. It's even portable, making it perfect for renters or maybe college dorms. I even pour it in my coffee. Like I use my AquaTrue water for my coffee. Even my coffee is healthy. So I truly can taste a difference. I really can, and I think that you will too. AquaTrue comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and even makes a great gift. Today, my listeners receive 20% off any AquaTrue purifier. Just go to aquatrue.com, that's AQUATRU.com, and enter code CARLOS at checkout. That's 20% off any AquaTrue water purifier when you go to aquatrue.com and use promo code CARLOS. When's the last time you were in your home country?
I last left Zimbabwe after my cases were suspended. So my treason cases were suspended in November of 2019.
Okay.
I was finally able to get my passport back, which had been taken away. I was finally able to get the title deeds to my parents' home, which had been taken away as surety. I wouldn't escape. And the police and the government agreed that they would suspend the charges and continue when they have enough evidence to try me.
Yeah.
And in that period between November 2019 and December 2019, I was able to finally leave the country.
Okay.
And so the last time I was in Zimbabwe is December of 2019.
And are they still trying to gather evidence? Are they,
yes, the case is now live. The last I heard was that they had a warrant out for my arrest.
Okay.
And of course, I think part of it was just linked to the fact that once I was out of the country, I continued to kind of speak against them.
Sure.
So they revived the case again.
Yeah. Wow. I have a question. I've been thinking this as you've been talking, because I think all of us, we're all just ordinary humans. We will all be forgotten in 200 years. Our great grandchildren won't know our names. Like we're here for a moment. And if you could go back to, say you get to walk into your office study that day that you are about to hit record, and if you could sit with yourself, knowing the arrests, the torture, the exile, but also knowing the hope you'd ignite, what would you whisper in the ear of yourself back then, right before you hit record?
I think I would probably look myself dead in the eyes and say, you're about to do something that is going to change the lives of people, but it's going to alter you hugely in ways you never thought possible. And I would also say to myself, the sense that you have always had, that there is something that you are supposed to contribute to humanity, is right.
Yeah.
Hold on to that sense.
Yes. That's good.
And I say this because along the way, when people ask me about this journey, I've always said to them, I wasn't 100% the whole way, every day, in it, for it, into it. There were days I wanted out. There were days I was upset at myself. There were days I was upset at God, and I railed and ranted at him.
Yeah.
There were days I fell into depression. And had I known at the time that what I was doing was not just some accident, but that it was a key part of my life, I think I would have been kinder to myself. I would have been gentler with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what today Ivan would say if I walked back in the office just before I would press that record button. I would say to him, remember to be kinder to yourself.
Wow.
Remember to be gentler to yourself, because you may not find that in other people. There will be seasons where that will be scarce. Remember in those moments to look yourself in the mirror and say, well done. It may not be the best for everyone, but you've done the best that you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last question based off of that. I'll say it this way. What's one thing you wish every person listening, whether they're in Zimbabwe, in America, knew about the strength that they're actually carrying inside of them right now?
I wish that people would know that courage is not measured by the danger we face, but by the actions we take.
Wow.
And that it is not the intensity of danger. It is the decision to act.
Wow.
That is what courage is. As much as running into a burning building is amazing and courageous, so is holding your little daughter or your son and looking them square in the eyes and telling them, I want you to know that I love you. I was never told that I was loved, but for some people, it takes courage just to say that.
Yes.
Just to say that. For some people, your courage shows up because you have decided that you will do all it takes to make sure that your family is well taken care of. Going to work and struggling through a job that you don't like, but it's the only one you can get, and that is courage.
Yes.
So it is not the danger we face, it's the actions that we take.
Yes.
Your cause reveals your courage.
Yes. Oh, well, you are now stuck with me as a friend. I can't look a man across a screen in the eye like this for this long, hear this story, and not be impacted myself. You have actually given me strength in a very hard season for me. And I love it. I just want everyone to remember again, and just to remember this idea that it's not the danger you find yourself in. It's the decision that you make in the moment. That's the courageous thing to do.
That's the courageous thing to do. That's the courageous thing to do.
Evan, thank you. This has been remarkable. I'm going to let people know where they can buy your new book. The story is, I think, not only going to be impactful to listen to, but I think, this is one of those things that you can, I think everybody, wherever they're listening to right now, knows that there are actions that can be taken if they feel like they've got, what do we do? Like, I don't agree with what's happening in my city or in my state or in my country. Or you can make a decision to do something.
And it doesn't have to be the biggest thing or the most amazing thing. It's just one step, small step. And the thing about it, Carlos, is once you take that one small step, it leads you to another one.
Yeah.
And then it leads you to another one. And before you know it, you're taking steps in ways that you never saw yourself do.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you for
You're welcome. And
that.
Again, I just want to remind everybody what the reason why your story and why so many millions of people were affected wasn't because you just opened up your camera and complained, and you just complained for the next 10 years of your life. There was that is not going to change anything. It's the action. It's the action. And so I just I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you and grateful for your story.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for having me here today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Yes. I know that shooketh you to the core like it shook me. Yvonne, thanks for being my new friend. Thanks for being our new inspiration. Thank you for teaching us how to human well. Friends, there's more where that came from. Thank you for hanging out with me. Please follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, and let people know that they can learn how to be better humans by coming to Human School. And with that, I want to say I appreciate you, and I will see you next week on another episode of Human School.